let's go to Christine Jardine.
Yeah, let us do exactly that. Liberal Democrat for Edinburgh West and spokesman on women and equalities, Christine Jardine, joins us now. Christine,
good morning.
Marvellous to see you. What is your party's policy on gender recognition certificates? Should it become easier for people who are transitioning from one gender to another to obtain those certificates?
Well, you know, this is a debate which I think, unfortunately, has got mired in toxic, unreasonable arguments. People making arguments from both sides that have got, have forgotten what gender recognition certificates, what the issue is about, that we've got vulnerable people who we should be protecting. And my party's policy has always been that we should think about the individuals, we should be looking after people, we should be protecting them, and that we shouldn't be making them targets or getting involved in some sort of ludicrous, toxic debate which helps nobody. So I think the best way of putting it as we go into the general election is that we want to find a sensible way forward that reassures people with genuine concerns but protects those in the transgender community who have had, quite frankly, a terrible time over the past 2 years.
Do you mind if I repeat the question? Is it your party's policy to make it easier for people to get gender recognition certificates?
It's my party's policy to have a sound, reasonable, evidence-based policy going forward. Now, we saw from the Cash Review that she identified that there had not been a sufficient protection, that we weren't giving young people the care and the protection that we should be doing. Now, what we want to do is take the positives from the Cash report, move forward, look at how we do that, how we overcome those problems, how we protect vulnerable people, and that we, for everybody in society. And that's why I think to bring this debate back, to try and make this debate in the general election, yes, it's an important issue, but you know what? We're not going to help anybody if we don't focus on the economy. We're not going to help anybody if we don't focus on
Christine,
providing more GPs and more dentists. So I really think, and I think I have answered your question, our policy is to move forward, to find, to take the recommendations of the Cash report, to look at where she said there were weaknesses and to find a strong way forward. Now, at the moment, there hasn't been a problem for 20 years. So let's not make one now. Let's look at how we improve the situation for everybody, how we reassure people who have genuine concerns about their children, about safe spaces, but at the same time, let's make sure we do everything we can to protect the most vulnerable in society.
Should those who have transitioned and describe themselves as women, but who were formerly men, go into women's prisons, and should they participate in women's sports?
I think the sports is an issue for sports authorities. I wouldn't interfere in that. There are many problems there, and that is something that I think we do have to leave to sports authorities to make the decision about what is best in their sport.
What about
in terms of prisons, we shouldn't be putting violent people in prisons with women. We shouldn't be putting people who are convicted of sex offences, regardless of their gender, in with women who might be vulnerable. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to look at
where will you
picture.
Put them? If they call themselves women, where will you put them?
When you say if they call themselves women,
we're
not talking about people who call themselves women. We are looking at people who have transitioned and who are legally women. Now, that's a different situation. If they are convicted of a crime which is not a sexual assault, it's not a funny issue, actually, if you don't mind me saying so. It's not a funny issue for anybody
I'm finding your
involved in this
answer funny.
situation.
That's the problem. Of course, we're talking about people who have transitioned. We're talking about people who describe themselves as women, who have self-certified as women, and we're asking you which sort of jail they should go into, a men's or a women's prison.
And what I am saying is that if someone has transitioned and is legally a woman, then they can, as long as they haven't committed violent or sexual offences against women, and they are not a danger to anyone, then they could go into women. But if anyone, regardless of the gender, regardless of self-certifying or whatever, if anyone is a danger to women, they should not be in a women's prison.
But by what you're saying then is you're basically saying that a man who's a biological man can be placed in a women's prison if...
No, I'm not.
Well,
no,
it
I'm
sounds
not.
like it.
I'm not.
Well, I'm just trying to interpret it. So you're not saying that. You're saying that a man...
No, that's what you're trying... No, I'm not saying that. And I would never say that a biological man should be in a women's prison. That's nonsense. And I don't think...
That's what I think, yes.
I don't think anyone who is worried about the safety of women in prisons, who is worried about the protection of the transgender community, or who has, you know, frankly, any common sense would talk about putting biological men who have not transitioned or who might be a danger into a women's prison. I have not said that.
So can you be clear of what you are saying then?
But do you know what? I think there might be people watching today who are thinking, why are they continually asking about this one issue, which I'm more than happy to answer on.
Because you're the spokesman on equality.
People watching today who want to know what Liberal Democrats would do about the lack of dentists in this country, the lack of doctors in this country,
Christine,
the state
we're asking
of the economy.
You because you're the spokesman for equality and women.
Yes, I am. I am answering your question.
We're on your subject. So
I have answered your question.
Somebody who is
I have answered your question.
Okay.
Someone who is self-certified as being a woman, you say that person cannot go into a women's prison. Is that what you said?
I said that someone who has transitioned, who has a certificate. No, can you let me finish, please? Someone who has transitioned, who is a woman legally, has been certified as a woman, not by me, but by those who are certifying, can go into a women's prison. But I would say there's an awful lot more to women and equalities. The equality in this country. If I could just finish, I find this doesn't help us get away from the toxic debate that we have had, which has damaged so many people, which doesn't recognise the genuine concerns that people have, and which doesn't do anything to protect the vulnerable people in our society. Now, what I think we should be doing is looking at what the Cass report said, taking the positives from it and moving forward. In terms of equalities, there's no equality in this country in healthcare. There's no equality in this country in dental care because people cannot get dentists. There's no equality in this country because our economy is shot to pieces by Liz Truss's mad policies. Now, if we don't address those issues, frankly, we won't have money for prisons for anybody, for mental health care for anybody, for dental care for anybody. And that is what the people in this country want to hear us talking about. They want to hear us talking about the issues that affect them every day in their working life and which this government has neglected. And that is why, if you like, I'm getting a little... if you like, frustrated at the fact that you don't seem to want to talk about the issues that affect so many people, so many women, so many men, so many minorities in this country. But you want to focus on one debate.
Christine, we thought it was a fantastic opportunity because you are the spokesman for women and equality.
And I've answered your question.
To speak to you about women and equality. I don't think either Nana or I actually feel that you have answered the question. And the Cass report...
Well, ask me a question. I feel that I have. I feel that I have said 3 times that we need to take the Cass report and the positive things it said. We need to recognise that it said that we were not providing sufficient care for young people, that we were not protecting vulnerable people. We need to recognise that. We need to take its recommendations. We need to set up the centres that it calls for. We need to detoxify the debate. We need to get... In the report, she says that the debate has become so toxic that medical practitioners don't want to put their heads above the parapet. How sad is that? Now, that's what we need to address. That's what we need to do. Now, to be honest, I think I'm answering your question.
The Cass report does not tell us how people should be recognised by a government as whether they've changed gender or not. What stages are needed for that gender change to be recognised? Cass report does not tell us that because that is a political matter. You are part of a political party and you are trying to get into power, and that's why it's reasonable to ask you what arrangements you would make to allow someone to change gender and the consequences it would have on which prison they went to, for example. That's reasonable.
The decisions about transitioning are medical ones. And they are for medical practitioners, and they're for medical practitioners to make the decisions about. They are not for politicians to be interfering in. And part of the problem with this debate is that people have interfered in it, and people have made ideological and political decisions about people's health, and that is wrong.
But Christine,
politicians need to let the medical
that's not right.
practitioners make the decisions.
Okay, well, let me
People
ask you
need
that.
to let the medical
How
practitioners
many medical
make the decisions.
practitioners? Christine, how many medical practitioners? A single doctor, as has been suggested by some in the Labour Party, or a panel of doctors? These are political decisions, how those judgments are made. What's your view on that? How many doctors should be involved in making that decision?
That is something for politicians to listen to what medical practitioners says, and it goes back to the Cass report.
Well, having listened to it, what's your decision?
If I could answer, please. In the Cass report, she said it had become so toxic that medical practitioners didn't want to put their heads above the parapet. Now, that is where the problem comes, and the people who have made it toxic are the ones who need to think about the damage that has done. And what we need to do is we need to step back and we need to recognise that this is a process that politicians are not the best people to make medical decisions about, and we need to allow the medical practitioners to do it. Now, the decision about whether it's one medical practitioner or two is something which I think we need to take the decision of the medical practitioners on. So I'm sorry, that is what I genuinely think. That's not a political answer. That's my belief. I believe that we need to listen to what medical practitioners say. First of all, we need to listen to the genuine concerns that some people have. We need to think about what damage this is doing to vulnerable people, detoxify the debate, take the Cass report, look at what it says, its recommendations, take the positive things forward. Do I like everything in it? No, of course I don't. And work to set up these 7 centres that Hilary Cass talks about setting up, to make sure that in the future we have a sound, reasonable debate where everyone is heard, but that the medical needs of people, the protection of the vulnerable community and genuine concerns are taken into account, and we detoxify this debate
Christine
and
Jardine,
move on.
thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.